Hello and welcome to my next class. Today I have come up with some very important author, that is John Milton. His works are really very important for all literature students, whether you are there in graduation, your post graduation, or if you're going to attend any of the competitive exams like NTA, NET, SET, LT grade students. This particular author is very important. When we talk about John Milton, what comes in our mind? Paradise Lost or Paradise Regained? Yes, John Milton is known for his Paradise Lost. But we should know more facts about John Milton, his poetry that were really very important. And these questions are also asked in your competitive exams. So today we will see the complete notes on John Milton. But before that, I would like to remind you that please, if you have yet not subscribed my channel, please subscribe to it. And in order to get notified about my videos, please click on the bell icon so that I can notify you every time I upload my videos. So without wasting time, let's begin with John Milton. When we talk about John Milton, he was born in London on 9 December 1968. Right? Please remember the where he was born. Sometimes these questions are asked that where he was born. That is London on 9 December 1968. Now, the hierarchy of English poets, Milton was one of the greatest poets. Milton's meaningful utterances and various aspects of life that Milton goes through is completely shown in his poetry, in his works that he goes through, the different aspects that he faces, right? And the approach that he uses and he writes his poetry is beautifully shown in his works. Though his works are divided into three parts, that is, the very first part is also called as the Horton period, which was from 1629 to 1640. Second period, he represents his political work and prose works, and इसका जो एक time period है वो था 1640 से 1663 तक. The third period, the main poetic skills that he has shown and where his fame rests is the third period, where he has written Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained. So there his fame rests, and इसका जो time था was from 1660 to 1674. Please remember these things, like first period कहाँ से था 1629 to 1640. Sometimes in your net examination they can ask you to match कि इनका जो फर्स्ट पीरियड था वो किसको बिलोंग करता था, या इस फर्स्ट पीरियड को हम क्या कहते थे, या सेकेंड पीरियड का टाइम लिमिट क्या था, और फॉर द थर्ड पीरियड एंड वेयर हिज फेम रेस्ट. So this is the complete knowledge of John Milton. Now one by one we'll come up with his works, like the first period, second period and third period. Look, when we learn literature, please remember one thing, that we should know the deep knowledge of each and every author. This will help you in each and every exams of yours. Why? Because they can ask you anything, and if you're prepared with these small things, then you can qualify these exams easily. So first we'll go through the first period and the second period. So let's begin the first period. So the very first period, here the poems composed during this period were Ode on the Morning of Christ's Nativity, El Allegro, and Tu Pensiero, Comus and Lycidas. Now when we talk about the very first poem, Ode on the Morning of Christ's Nativity, here we see the celebration, it celebrates the birth of Christ, and in this poem we can see that the influence of Spencer can be clearly seen. Right? So two things that you have to remember in this poem, that it celebrates the birth of Christ and whose influence is being seen in this poem is Spenser's influence can be seen in this poem. We are not going to take it in detail because it is not that important, but yes, you should know that it celebrates the birth of Christ and it was highly influenced by Spenser. Now the very next poem, El Allegro and Tu Penseero. Now when we talk about El Allegro, it represents the cheerful man and the life of the joyful man, where the life of this joyful man starts from the early morning till the time he retires. And here this man is request the goddess of mirth to allow poet live with her in the delights of rustic scenes. Now he just wants to enjoy his life to the fullest, and this El Allegro, the cheerful man or the joyful man, here this represents the cavaliers. Please remember that it represents the cavaliers. Now the very second part of this poem that we talk to Penseero, here we see the thoughtful man. He's kind of sad also, and he's in a deep thinking where he requests the goddess of melancholy, that is melancholy is sad, yaad rakhna, right? He requests the goddess of melancholy to bring peace, leisure and contemplation. Here the poet describes the pleasure of meditative life, tragedy, epic poetry and music. So please remember that in Tu Penseero, Puritan ideals of life are being represented. So what you have to remember in these two poems, El Allegro, the cheerful man, represents the cavalier poets, Tu Penseero, thoughtful man, and here what Milton describes, the pleasure of meditative life, of tragedy, epic poetry and music, and represents the Puritan ideals of life, right? Now moving on to the next point, that is Milton's two poems were in the form of masque. Now let's understand what masque is. When a particular act or some poetry is in a masque form, then in that poetry each and every actor acts, and the dancing is by masked actor. जो हम they in their face they put a mask and then they perform. This is called the mask act, right? So he wrote two poems, or you can say in two fragments. The very first fragment was Arcades. This was one of the fragment. The second fragment is very important, that is Comus. Here the other ones whose title is taken from its chief character, मतलब जो Comus title लिया गया है is being taken from the chief character जो यहाँ पे Comus represent कर रहा है. और Comus किसे represent कर रहा है? It represents it as god of revelry. Now when we talk about this poem, this was written at the request of Milton's friend, that is Henry Laws. He was a musician. Now what this poem is about, I will tell you in brief. This poem or this work of Milton, it represents his high poetical qualities. When we talk about the story, there are two brothers and a sister, and they are going in a forest, and their sister goes astray by night, and these two brothers and a sister is separated. Then this girl is taken away by Comus to his place, to where he dwells, right? And where that girl sees that he has transformed people into half bestial creatures by his spell, which he was going to apply on that girl too. But then at that time her brother comes, and she is taken away by her brothers. In this poem, particularly Comus, this poem is remembered for its poetical beauties, right? हमें हर चीज में लिटरेचर की we should know the deep knowledge of it. In each and every video of mine, I tell you that literature is about deep knowledge. You will love literature if you have deep knowledge of it. So please remember Comus. Very easy story, but and you will remember also. So this is how we can remember this character Comus, to whom it represents. He represents the god of revelry, and this particular title was taken from its chief character. Right, now moving on to Lycidas. Lycidas is a pastoral elegy upon the death of his college mate Edward King. Now he has written this poem. It is a pastoral elegy where he sad upon the death of his very good friend Edward King. It was said that he was drowned in the Irish Sea. But when he starts talking in the poem, it is seen that Edward was not the only subject that Milton represents here. The real subject comes, he is disturbed about the fact that death can come anytime. So that uncertainty that clicked into the mind of Milton is the main subject. And he realized that death might forestall the achievement of that fame which was his ambition. Fame was his ambition, that he want to achieve something. But he said that death can come anytime, and this might take away everything, his achievement, his fame. That was his ambition. Now, this varying mood that comes into Milton is, his mood was in doubt, fear, anger. But finally, there was a piece of belief. And he says that everything rests on God's and is to be found in heaven, because he say he before he was he was very sad, but afterwards he said that his friend Edward, he is there in heaven, and everything depends on God. So there was a sign of relief in Milton's mind, where अभी after a few minutes पहले जहाँ पे he was uncertain and he was full of anger. And why anger? Because he thinks that this was not the time when Edward King should die. उसका वो age नहीं था. So he was like, death can come anytime to anyone. That was that was the subject that was going in Milton's mind. So when we talk about Lycidas, then one should remember that the main subject was the uncertainty in Milton's mind, because he realized that death might forestall the achievements of that fame which was his ambition. So this was the first period all about, where we have learned Ode on the Morning of Christ's Nativity, El Allegro, and Tu Penseero, Comus and Lycidas. Here we have also learned masque. Masque क्या होता है? Is acted and dancing by masked actor. Please remember this. Now moving on to the second period. So here we start with the second period, which is from 1640 to 1663. A speech by John Milton that is called as Areopagitica. It was composed in 1644, where the poets represent their point against censorship. Now, when we talk about the speech of John Milton, which is called as Areopagitica, it was composed in 1644. Please remember this. This is important because this question can be asked in your NET examination. It was composed in 1644, and here the poet, before this, I would like to tell you one thing, that this speech of John Milton is called as prose polemic. Now, what is polemic? Polemic is when a person strongly attacks or defends on a particular opinion is polemic. That work is called polemic. So this particular speech of by John Milton is a prose polemic work. Please remember it, right? Now, when we talk about this work, then this was the most influential treatise defending the concepts of humans' right to free speech and expression. We have a freedom to speak, and so they asked the poets and the academic people, they opposed the viewpoint of censorship, right? And here a speech for the liberty of unlicensed printing to the Parliament of England was given. This was the most influential treatise, as I told you, and the philosophical defenses of the principles of a right to freedom of speech and expression. So here the poets, the main important point, or you can say, I have already described in this point of mine, that this speech by John Milton was just based on the poets and academic people. They opposed the viewpoint of censorship. Censorship, we all know what it is, where if you have something objectionable you have said, then one can remove that part and represent your speech as a positive one, पर जो negative part था वो हटा दिया. So here John Milton was trying to and the other poets trying to tell that it is their right, it is a human's right to free speech and expression, so their work should not be censorship, right? Now this particular speech by John Milton, please remember its name, when it was composed, and what it represents, right? बस इसके लिए इतना ही काफी है. Other things you don't have to remember. Now there were two sonnets by Milton which are worth notice, which we should remember. That is on his blindness, very important, and on the late massacre in Piedmont, right? याद रखना, on the late massacre in Piedmont. So this is not important, the later one, but on his blindness was the real poem, which is very important, right? Because here this poem presents on his blindness. It is a masterpiece of John Milton, and here poet talks about his own blindness, and he says that he got blind at the age of 44, and in the early time, or in the beginning of his blindness, he used to feel isolated in this dark and big world, but later he accepts the calamity with dignity and fortitude, and he is like, yes, he can fight for it. Here the poet also tell that despite the fact that God has taken away his power of vision, his soul is very eager to serve his maker, that is God. He is very eager to serve God, and present the account of making proper use of his that he has used his skills that was given by God on the judgment day. So he's happy about that particular thing. So the poem goes like that, and in the middle of the poem he questions God, that this is only the God who has taken away his blindness, then why should he make use of his skills, and why should he serve God? Because this is how God has taken away his eyes, and maybe this is what God wanted. And but then later on he understands, and patiently, by the end of the poem, when we see, he turns very optimistic, and Milton says, those who wait for the command of God patiently also serve him. जो गॉड के कमांड को they wait and listen to it patiently, वो उनको सर्व कर पाते हैं easily. So here Milton finds consolation in this idea. इस idea से he got a bit consolated and he said okay, consolation इस idea से उनको मिलता है. Being blind, he is not of much use to God, unlike thousands of angels. He said that he's blind, he know that, and he's not much use to God, but he will do whatever he can serve. And so he completely surrender himself to the will of God and is waiting patiently for his command. And this is no less than the active service that one can give. So is our life, that we should do everything in our life patiently. This is something that God has always, through every person, He tells that one should have a lot of patience. So here we come to an end of this presentation. In the next presentation, we will talk about paradise lost, paradise regained, and Samson agonists. So please follow each and every video so that you can easily go through your notes. जब इन सब को पढ़ने के बाद you will go through your notes, it'll be easy for you. ठीक है? So here we have taken each and every poetry of John Milton. Each and every important point we have taken of John Milton. So these are the complete notes for you. So please work hard, and if you have any queries related to them, you can always ask me. And wait for my next video where I will upload very soon Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, and his other poems. Thank you and keep watching.